Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Real Talks. I'm your host, like always, Brady Carducci, and today on the show, I have a very special guest. He's a Toronto-based, multifaceted entrepreneur, creative, YouTuber, creative director, photographer, cinematographer. He really does do it all. He's worked with brands such as Mercedes-Benz, Adobe, and Corona, just to name a few. Please welcome to the show, Chris Howe. How's it going, buddy?
Yo, dude. Okay, wait, you asked me to do this.
Right.
Boom, squirrel.
I like it. Man, I'm really excited to sit down with you today, talk about some social media stuff, some branding, YouTube stuff, all that. But before we get into that, we're living through a global pandemic right now. So how have you been dealing with COVID and kind of all this stuff that's come about with it?
I think on the personal side, that's where I've seen like the most development and I guess like a cycle of like stuff that I went through. So on the business side, luckily with YouTube and the position that we're in right now with a lot of like Instagram, social media, things like that, our business wasn't like impacted as heavily. So sometimes we have like travel jobs and things like that. So like all that stuff kind of went away, but because our portfolio is so diverse, we work in the tech space, we work on YouTube things, we work on this, we were able to like maintain our business and not be impacted too drastically by it. But I would say emotionally and personally, that's where I was like impacted the most by it. So like when the first like announcement of like the global pandemic was happening and like, okay, all our jobs were like kind of getting canceled and like there was a lot of like, hey, we're getting pushback from things. Can we like do something in like a month right now instead of like right now? And then I had just made Lucas, who's behind me right there, full time, and we had just got in the studio. So like basically I'd like increased a lot of my expenses and then jobs were getting pushed back. And I was really worried a bit at the beginning financially, but mostly just personally that like, all right, are these the right choices, the right decisions? Right. And then I would say it's hard to define it exactly, but let's call it light depression. But I definitely went through like a part where I got really, really sad and very anxious. And then it was about two months of that and then coming out of that. And then now I feel like I'm in like the best place I've ever been in my life in terms of like my emotional health, my mental health, and everything like that too. So I would say the pandemic impacted me more on the personal side than it did on like the business side.
Right. Now you said light depression. Now, do you think that's just because like, you were under a little bit more stress? There was a lot of like unforeseen things that were, coming your way. Like, what do you think like contributed to it?
I think it's because over the last 3 years, my lifestyle had changed so drastically with like becoming more of like a YouTuber and Instagrammer. And I don't think I ever had a chance to like fully slow down. So what had happened is like, let's move back 2 years from now. I had had this company, we were working full time, like Lizzie and I were doing like corporate stuff and commercial stuff. And I was like, oh, I'm also gonna do YouTube on top of that. So let's go from like 60 hours a week of being an entrepreneur and then adding like another 40 on top of that, as well as trying to maintain like family and everything else. And we did that. And we transitioned into YouTube and video, and we were still working like these 60, 80-hour weeks. And I didn't have Lucas or I didn't have help for all that. So like trying to do it all ourselves and just trying to like keep our heads above water. And I remember just being like feeling so high off of that all the time because I was so excited that I don't even think I realized how much it was like impacting me. So when there's like a moment where like breaks of like the world are just like, slow down. I think it gave me a second to finally like reflect on being like, yo, like, do you want all this? Is this like feeding you properly? Like, have you just been so distracted that you don't even know what you really want? And then I think when it happened, that's where we'll call like the anxiousness and the anxiety set in, because there's a multitude of factors where it's like my normal life had slowed down, where like you kind of get used to this new normal. Then you're like finally looking inward versus outward for like a lot of validation. And then mixed with just a lot of like conversations and people and being home and not moving as much and not taking care of my health. So like it was a lot of things all at once, but I think it was important for me to have gone through that.
Of course, because I mean, now you just said you're in such a happy place, right? So you got to go through those peaks and valleys for sure. Quick question though, in terms of the internal work you did you find yourself maybe gravitating towards like maybe meditation to help with your like anxiety? Like, did you find that helped at all? Or
a little bit. I didn't like do meditation in like traditional sense of like sitting down and just being like, focus on your breath and be in the now. That's for me, I've never really found that to be effective. I've tried to do it. It just hasn't worked exactly for like my type of personality. But a lot of it came from like taking more out of my life. So I'm sure we'll probably chat about this a little bit later too, but like I finally decided, I was like, you know what, I got to stop looking at like social media news and having all this impact in the world and just like going for bike rides and going for walks and like cooking my own food and finding passions outside of my job so that my identity wasn't fully attached to my work. So I think when like, that was a big thing, is I think when I slowed down, work kind of like shifted a little bit too. And I was like, oh wait, I only know myself as like a person that makes videos and takes photos. Like how do I find more of who I am outside of that if we take that away?
Interesting. Yeah, because I know like at least for me and a lot of people I know, they have that same struggle, because it's like, you know, you want to accomplish things, you want to be successful, so you get so wrapped up in that it's like, okay, wait, like I'm more than just what I do, right? I have a personality,
100%,
interests, hobbies, so that's totally true.
Yeah, and how do you measure that too? Because it's very easy in YouTube to measure your success, because you can be like, look, I have X amount of subscribers, I have X amount of views, I have X amount of dollars, whatever you want to call it. There's like an actual metric that you can go by. But I think my values had gotten shifted very like subconsciously through my time on YouTube, where I was like focusing more on like, oh, make the video and get the views. And I don't even think I realized, I was like, I'm not even pushing myself creatively. Like, am I even enjoying making these, or am I just doing it for the hope of getting validation online?
And the attention.
And the attention and things like that. So like, it really took a lot of like reframing. So like, let's say it's not meditation that was like helpful for that. A lot of it was just like, inner reflection on like reframing how I measured what was important in my life. Because all I found was like, if a video didn't do well, it would make me super anxious. And if it, I'm like, oh, well, my castle of cards is falling, or something like that, whatever you want to say. And I think that's when I was like, oh wait, I need to ground myself on other things that don't waver so heavily. And then also realizing like, I have no control over that. Like people, like my happiness was like being controlled by a YouTube algorithm that like wasn't even designed by me. Right. And then you're like, that's insane.
And when you make that connection, it's like, okay, there's a problem there. I gotta fix it.
So then that's when I was like, all right, I gotta like take social media out and just use it as my means of distributing my creativity, rather than focusing on the results and the measurable results.
The analytics.
On the analytics side. I think I just got, like, the thing is, like, this whole job started off as, like, very, like, creative, have fun, take photos, push yourself. And then what ends up happening when you build a business around your creativity is you start measuring it by, like, all right, well, I'm selling a product. And then the product isn't just, like, sponsorships or things that are in the video. It's like, my product is me, it's my brand. And then all of a sudden you have to build a business around it to make it a career. So then all of a sudden you start really focusing on like the analytical side and the business side, and you kind of lose touch with like why it all started. Hence why we have this whole sign in the back. Remember why you started.
It's simple, but it's such a good message. Remember why you started. 100%.
It just helps like center you, because you're gonna have days where you're gonna like look, and I even see it now where I'm like, I'm in my good place, but I'll like have conversations with Lucas being like, yo, that video crushed, like let's do something sick. And then I'm like, whoa. The reason why we liked it is because we liked our creative approach to it, and we were pushing ourselves creatively and trying harder. And I would say for the first time, I'm like, the last 5 videos I put out, I'm proud of every single one.
Okay, that's
rather than like, I just put out a video to put out a video. Right, to like stay relevant or something, or feed the algorithm, or feed the media machine, right?
Or just that, even that mentally, just the, okay, I'm being consistent with what I'm uploading.
And like, and the thing is, like, people really get caught up with on YouTube, consistency is like a regular upload, but consistency could also just mean like consistent quality, or consistency on like improving yourself or something like that too. And that's why I keep coming back to like, it took a lot of reframing of how I looked at the world, because I was looking at it in one way and that was like not feeding me or making me happy. And I needed to like reframe how I looked at everything, which is more of like therapy, and not direct therapy of like, I'm talking to a therapist. It's just like therapy comes in many different forms. And for me, it was just a lot of self-reflection and being like, all right, slow down, write things down. What is actually something that works for you, and then experiment with different things that are really actually feeding my happiness and based on more like organic and real things, like being creative, or, you know, taking a photo I'm really proud of, rather than like a photo that you think will do well.
Just because of the, you know, who's in it, or
exactly.
the backdrop and stuff.
And the irony of the whole thing is that the business does better when I'm not focusing on the business.
That's
Isn't that
funny.
weird?
That's funny how that works, because you think it'd be the opposite.
Yeah.
But it's like when you remove your mindset from that, it's like, wow, it actually does better, which is crazy.
Yeah, it's weird because you're like, oh, I'm being more creative, and people actually like that.
Yeah,
and I'm more of myself rather than like a person that I think I should be for YouTube, right?
Exactly. But that's actually segues perfectly into my next question, because I want to know kind of, how did you get into kind of the media industry, this whole film thing? Like, where did it stem from your childhood when you were growing up?
Yeah, my mom's always like was taking photos like all the time. Okay. So like I think and then my dad was like really, really into music. So like we'd always be listening to like Tom Petty or something in the house, and you have like sound systems. So like seeing my parents being like, I'm investing in cameras and I'm investing in like sound and I'm investing in audio and visual, showcases that it's a priority for them.
Of course,
right? So that's where it's like, okay, well, our family likes this kind of stuff. So as a kid, like, if we're gonna get like really deep and really real,
go ahead.
It goes like, well, I want to feed their happiness and feed like what they like. So I want to start taking photos because my mom takes photos, and I'm gonna start playing guitar because my dad loves music.
Right. Okay.
And even though it's very subconscious, it helps. That focus helps like direct what ends up being a bigger theme throughout the rest of your life, right? And then they always loved movies, and they always loved television. So I was like, oh, well, maybe if I do some of that, maybe they'll really love that I'm doing that too.
Yeah.
And so, and then I didn't come self-aware of that until like later in my life too, because it's just like, it's very subconscious, right? Yeah. But for me, my parents were like, okay, if you want to do something, let's get you the thing that you want to be able to do it. So if you want to play music, let's get you a guitar, and we'll go and do the research. We'll get you a good one, and you'll go and learn how to do it, and you can play music if you want. Okay, of course, or if I wanted to get into like cameras and shooting video, my parents are like, oh, well, we saw this thing at like Toys R Us. That's like a camera. It's digital. It was like the first digital camera. Right. It's literally called Digital Blue. Actually, one second, I have it.
Yeah, go ahead.
It's not here.
So that was, you're saying, like the first camera that you were actively like shooting with, pretty much, right?
Yeah. So that camera was it was like this thing called Digital Blue, and it looked like a director's viewfinder.
Oh, really?
It shot like 240p video. I could only shoot like 5 minutes of footage, and it would take like 1 megapixel photos.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And I would like bring it into the software. It was like the Digital Blue software, and I would make like short films, and I made like horrible stuff. Okay. And like CKY was always like a really big thing then. So we'd always do like Jackass style like videos and us like joking around and skateboarding. Like it's very classic of that era, trying to follow in like the footsteps of like Johnny Knoxville and like things like that. And then I would go into like the auto show, and I'd make a little video with my dad filming like cars and stuff like that.
I like that.
And then we would do family vacations. And the irony is I didn't know how to spell vacation. So I made a whole series, and my parents never told me until later.
Right.
I made How Family Vactions because I forgot the extra A. So there's like a whole DVD series of like these family trips that we went on called How Family Vactions. So I would film our family trips. So like that's where like the travel comes in. That's where like cars became a theme. That's where like all these little things in my life, and documenting it became important to me. Okay. So I started shooting on that camera, and I would say like that's what like really sparked my interest in filmmaking and photography.
Okay. Do you guys ever, as a family, would like go back and watch like your old stuff and just like reflect, like, oh, I remember that time you were at the cottage or something? Like, is that a thing you guys do?
We haven't done it in a while, but I think I know exactly where the DVDs are at my parents' place.
Okay.
And I think if we went back, we'd probably watch them and just like laugh and stuff like that. But it was always like, there's always like really like fun travel montage videos, and that's funny because that's later in life, like kind of what I still do.
Yeah.
So I was doing that at like 14. And my parents just always kept investing back into like my passion. So if I was interested in that, they'd be like, all right, well, let's buy you like a mini DV camera, and now you're shooting like HD, like 720 HD.
So it's like an upgrade.
Yeah, an upgrade. And I would like start shooting on mini DV tapes, and we would just kind of like keep going from there. And then my dad bought me like a mirrorless DSLR Nikon, and then a D80, and then the D80 turned into a Canon 7D, and the Canon 7D turns into a Sony A7S, and now it turns into whatever cameras that we use now, right?
Which is a lot. But
yeah.
Interesting. So in terms of like skill development, obviously, your family was into cameras and all that. Would your dad, when you're shooting, give you tips, or would you go to somebody else? Like, did you have any mentors or someone that would show you kind of like technique or angles, like, composure, all that kind of stuff?
I grew up in like the internet era, so right. So I mean, we all did. So you know, I think my mentors or the people I learned from are just like reading blogs and seeing other people doing it online, and like you know, as I started to get more serious, to be like watching people like Devin Supertramp and things like that. So like my education was more on the YouTube side because my dad, you know, he's like a software implementation person. So like he doesn't do that. My mom, you know, she was focused on like raising me. So like for my family, like they liked creative things, but they weren't like traditional creative people. Right. So my dad like plays guitar, but he only likes to like play Bon Iver songs over and over again, and like that's his vibe. Whereas I think I learned just because I had friends who were like creative friends, and we would just like do things like that together. So I'd learn through my friends because they would learn through someone else.
Right, and they
things
show
like that,
you.
and they show you how to do it. So a combination of internet mixed with like people around me. I just didn't have like a traditional mentor in the space.
No, that's good. I mean, even for us, even for myself too. Like I need it, even if it comes to interviewing or like I don't know, like music. I just always go to YouTube. It's always like
so. You're the online mentors.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But in terms of you know the obviously development, but when you were developing, obviously you started to take film, photography, all that pretty seriously. When you're going on that path, were there certain milestones that you hit that were like, okay, you know what, like I should really pursue this with all I've got. This seems to be something that A, I'm good at, B, people like, and I just enjoy doing it.
Yeah, the funny thing is I was pursuing a career as like a musician for a while. So like I wanted to be like a singer-songwriter. So like my history with creativity went like photo, video, then picked up a guitar. Then I stopped doing like as much photo video, but maybe I was like documenting me as a musician on photo and video. And then I really wanted to do like the Jason Mraz, Jack Johnson thing for a while. I was also part of like a band with my grade 12 English teacher, like a heavy metal alternative rock band called the Bloody Five that had 4 members. And I played bass in that band for a while too.
Nice.
So after I graduated high school, my grade 12 English teacher was like, "Oh, I know you play bass. Do you want to like be in a band with us?" Now that it's not weird that you're graduated. So we did that. We like toured. We made an album. Like super proud of that. And then that shifted into like pursuing a career because I was a big fan of like Ed Sheeran and like Macklemore, and I was like, oh well, if they can kind of do their own thing too, I kind of want to do that. So quit the band. Started pursuing singer-songwriter thing, and I gave that like all I possibly could.
All your
I was like all my energy. I would try to sell out shows, like everything that I possibly could, hustling CDs afterwards. And I just like realized that lifestyle like wasn't for me. And what was happening is I was making all these videos to promote my music, and people would be like, "I really like your videos." And I was like, "No, like the song. The song's good.
I mean, the video's good,
but the video's really good." I was like, okay, well, so I found myself ending up in this like videographer and photographer role, and people were like, well, there's a demand for it now. And as they were shifting into like more social, there's the opportunities where there's like these jobs didn't exist before. So I was working as a lifeguard for the town of Newmarket. And my boss was like, hey, I know you like make videos for your music and stuff like that. Do you want to make a video for like our aquatics department? So I filmed a video for them. The mayor of Newmarket saw it. He was like, we should give this kid a job. Do you want to? And then they were like, do you want to do the same thing that you're doing, get paid the same that you're getting paid now as a lifeguard, but you just make videos instead? I was like, that sounds amazing.
That's pretty cool.
So I did that for a year. I ended up creating like a couple of viral videos in the government space, which is like 5,000 views for like a government agency. It's like a million views. So like 5,000 people saw this.
I
can
just picture like everyone like around the cubicle. Oh, like look at this video.
They're like, that's almost the whole town.
Exactly.
Right. So I started getting calls from like different government agencies, and I had a moment where I was like, oh, I can make money here. I can still be creative. And at that point, my passion for music was really starting like to dwindle because there's just so many roadblocks. And at some point, you can just like, you can only handle it for so long, right? And I felt like I had given it like my all with music. Like I had gotten featured on like Good Morning America, and I just selling out shows. And I just realized that like nothing was like turning the page, or nothing felt like it was like a proper career. Whereas I was like, oh, I can make a video and make 5 times as much on a video than I was just hustling a whole show and selling that out. And although I would get these like really big rushes on stage from playing music, I could get the same thing, and I realized I could like have the lifestyle that I wanted by doing more photo and video because there's demand in the market for it. And then I was like, oh, okay, well, if I look at what my goals are with music, it was to be able to travel around the world and do that kind of stuff. And then the more interviews that you watch, you hear that musicians are like, well, you just live on a bus. And you go to the venue or a hotel.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, but in the photo and video world, I could maybe like work with tourism boards, and I could maybe like get to shoot and be creative, but also have those life experiences. So it kind of just was this whole like shift of like, well, maybe I'll stop with music because it's like not really even making me happy anymore, and start going to photo and video, which is like providing happiness and financial opportunities, and maybe has the opportunity to do something like bigger with it. And there's like, somebody said something to me one time that like stuck with me, and it really like reframed how I looked at the opportunities with YouTube and Instagram, is that like Instagrammers and YouTubers are like the modern day rock stars.
Oh, 100%.
Right?
100%.
So then I was like, well, okay, well, music, I love music, and I don't want to say that music, because I think that music is such a universal language. It's so powerful and can do so much for people. But I think I just realized that that wasn't my vessel, and my vessel was photo and video.
Yeah, because I was gonna ask you, because if you talk to like some creatives, they start doing one thing. Let's just say, for example, like music, like you said, they find it really tough to be like, oh, okay, like I have to give, because at the end of the day, everyone has that has a dream, whether it be I want to be like the next NBA player, I want to be the next like Michael Jackson or something like that. So did you find it like really tough, or like you said, because you're losing the passion, it was a smooth transition for you?
Yeah, it was just, it's a tough thing. There was like one moment when there's like grant systems in Canada,
right? And
the grant systems can like fund music videos, and they can fund viral videos, and they can fund all this stuff. And I was like, I remember applying for it. It was called like the Much Fact Viral Fund, and they would give you like $5,000 to make a video. And I had these concepts of me like surfing and playing guitar at the same time, and I wanted the money to be able to like fund the production of that, and then use it to like help promote the video and just use those funds. I was like, all I wanted was $5,000.
That's not that,
right?
Yeah.
And I applied for the application like 5 times, and I was denied every single time. Wow. And I would see, and it's not, and I think at that point it wasn't that, I just felt so defeated. And to the point where I was like, well, is this a sign, or is this like, because you can always be like, well, just keep digging more, like those like Facebook memes where it's the guy like digging,
the gems,
and then and then there's like the gems are just like around the corner. I'm like, am I that guy, or do I just take this as a sign that like maybe this isn't working, and maybe this isn't like what I actually want to be doing?
Yeah.
And then I realized what would actually make me happy. And it mostly just kind of was like the passion was dwindling. I was getting too defeated. I wasn't enjoying playing bars at 2 a.m. for drunk people anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
And I was like, you know what? Why don't we shift this into like something that I'm also really stoked on? And that was like providing just as much creative happiness, right?
That's actually a really good point you make, because it's like even in maybe your work today, like other opportunities, do you still find it tough to be like to give up on something, or be like, hey, you know what, like I really want to do this project, but it's just really not for me? Like do you have you found that balance in saying yes and saying no, or are you maybe jumping to say yes to things more so than declining? When
I first started in YouTube, my whole thing was I said yes to everything. And it's like, that's kind of like the beginning of like any business. So like Lizzie and I had this company, it was already established, and we were kind of in this position where we were like, oh, say yes to this and say no to this. But with YouTube at the beginning, I was like, well, I want to grow it. And it's like, yes to every collaboration, yes to every job, yes to this, even if it doesn't pay, yes to all of it. And then at that point, you can just discover what you like and what you don't like from that.
Exactly.
And one of my favorite quotes is from Miles Davis. He says like, the notes that you don't play are just as important as the notes that you do.
I like that.
Right? And like, imagine trying to hit all the piano keys all at once. It would just sound like garbage.
Right.
But the moment, if you play it in like a beautiful way and you don't play certain notes, it sounds better. Right? So I always look at my career like a song. Okay. And I always try to be like, let's make it as like melodic and beautiful as possible. Okay. And let's try to like,
just make it
say yes and no to the right things.
Yeah.
And now I'm in a position that I would say I'm in a fortunate position now where I feel like I can have the strength and the confidence to say yes and no to certain jobs, even if it's like, oh, but that would like pay really well, and that could be great. I've learned more about, it's like about integrity, and you have to go through those things. Like I've said yes to jobs that I probably shouldn't have said yes to, and I recognize that it wasn't worth the short-term gains of like, oh, well, sure, I got some money up front, but like this impacted my brand, or this did this to my happiness, or this made me feel a certain way.
Yeah.
So now it's very like deliberate. Like Lucas and I will have conversations about being like, is this the right job? Is this the right opportunity? Like I'll say it on the channel now. Like I said no to like a Lamborghini job one time.
Oh wow.
I got like, they were like, hey, do you want to like drive cars down the coast of California?
Right.
And I had to say no, and it just wasn't the right fit in my life at that time.
Okay.
And I know it sounds ridiculous, like when you first hear that, you're like, well, no one
It's Lamborghini.
It's Lambo, and they picked like a handful of people. I just remember it wasn't what I wanted to be doing, and it wasn't the right fit for our brand. And at that point, if I had said yes to it, I would have not done it justice. I would have been burnt out, and I would have, it wouldn't have fed me in the way that you think it would have for a lot of people.
It wouldn't be like as fulfilling as, the project you would have
it's still awesome. Like if that opportunity had come at a different time or maybe at a different date, then for sure. But there's so many factors that you have to keep in mind for those things. It could be timing. It could be the jobs, the people that are on it, the certain things that are involved. And I just was like exhausted. Like I was like, I just didn't want to like. If I had done one more job or traveled on an airplane one more time, I probably would have like collapsed on site kind of thing. Like it was just too much. So it sounds ridiculous when you're just like, oh, you turned down a Lamborghini job. But it's like, that gave me the knowledge and the confidence to be able to say no to future jobs. Because if I can say no to Lambo, I can say no to anyone.
That's actually interesting because this just popped in my head. But, when you get these big jobs, like, work with Mercedes or Lamborghini, because I feel like, your parents or your friends, you would have a lot of outside pressure. Like, oh my God, Chris, like you declined a Lamborghini job.
Oh yeah,
like,
especially with my dad too. Like my dad loves cars. And I remember telling him, being like, they want to do this. And he's like, oh, once in a lifetime opportunity, bud.
Right.
You got to do it. Yeah. And then I'm like, well, am I doing it for me or am I doing it for him? Right?
Yeah.
And am I just trying to do this so that he'll be like, yeah, dude, sick.
Yeah.
Right?
And like he can show his, like, look what my son did.
Yeah, or whatever it is for him, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And it takes for that, you have to like be in such a tough position to say no that you're like, well, this gives me so much strength in the future.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and also too, like now, like, do you keep everything, like if you get, a brand approaches you, do you keep everything just so close-knit in-house, like, the group of people that you work with directly so that you're not influenced by outside people to say yes when, you really know, hey, it's a no?
Yeah, I would say on the decision to do it, yes. Okay. On like if I'm saying yes or no to do the job, then it's like I would probably just like do my close tribe of like Lizzie and, maybe like one other friend of mine who's like works as a mentor, and then Lucas. And then, I'd have a discussion there. And I also have to remember too, because like our agent will bring us jobs and he'll be like, yo, this is sick, you should do it.
Right.
But I have to remember that like it's in his best interest to like also
of course,
get the
that's
job.
His job, right?
So like it gives me, I have to take a minute and be like, all right, one, do I want to do this? Okay. And then two, if it's someone else that wants to do it, am I doing it for them because it makes them also happy? And is that going to feed me and feed my happiness too? Because I might say yes to jobs because I know that Lizzie wants to do it and Lizzie's my partner.
Of course.
So like, then I'm like, you know what? I'm in because it feeds you and feeds your goals. Or for Lucas, if he's like, I've always wanted to do this job, then I know that it's because I'm making like my small team happy. And then, so if it's about the decision, I keep it very close knit. Okay. And then if it's about like the creative and it's all about collaboration.
Of course.
It's like we're working on a job right now and I'm like reaching out to like all these friends about being like, yo, what are your thoughts on this? What do you want to do this? How can you bring your awesome creativity to this and make this better? Because I think collaboration on the creative side feeds me and feeds the project and makes better art.
Of course, and always reaching out to your network too. I mean, you probably are hit up people like, oh, I haven't talked to him in so long, but it's like, oh, it's good. It's just good to reconnect.
Totally. Like so it's funny. Like for this next one, I want to shoot potentially like a drummer. Okay. And I used to be a part of this like rock band. So like I messaged. I haven't done anything with the band, or I haven't really like talked to them much. I talked with like one of the guitarists like a little bit. But I hadn't chatted with the drummer in like 6 years. Okay. Right. And I just like shot him a text message being like, dude, long time no talk. Like, I think I have a chance for us to do something fun together. Like, do you want to give me a call later? Let's figure it out. You know what I mean?
That's cool. So I want to kind of shift it back a little bit to when you first started to really take YouTube and social seriously. So what was that decision like for you, and how did you approach being like, okay, I'm doing all this film stuff, like you were saying before, you're working with the city of Newmarket. So when did that shift happen of, okay, I'm going to do the YouTube route, I'm going to take it seriously, and maybe if you want to talk a little bit about, the strategy and the trial and error to really build your brand to where it is now?
Yeah, that's a pretty loaded question.
I know.
No, totally. Okay, let's move back and like give some context. So like it was definitely like a super hard decision to be like, I'm giving YouTube like my full go. Yeah. And what I always tell people is that like that choice of like, where do we go from? So we had the agency. Okay. And the agency was doing well, and Lizzie and I could have like coasted off that for the rest of our lives.
And just did that.
Just did that. Like built that, did commercial and corporate work, and like we would have been happy doing that. But I also wanted to like work with travel agencies, and I wanted to do some more social stuff. And I was a really big fan of like Casey Neistat and Ben Brown and all these things. And like a part of me always saw myself in those guys, right? And I was like, man, if they can do it, like those are just normal dudes.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like Casey owned an agency, and all he did is just start making YouTube videos. So like, you know, it's not what's so hard about that.
No,
it's just like, why can't I do it too?
Yeah.
Like, why not me?
Why not it be me? Yeah.
Right? Like, there's nothing. And I always, Lizzie and I talk about this. Like, I came from a family where like my parents were always like, "You're great. You can do it." So like, I almost had this like blinders on with a lot of my life, where I was just like, no, nothing can hurt me. Just go full force.
Right. Things, yeah.
So like, I'm also like an Aries personality, which is very like bull, like fire, just go for it. Passion. Like, I'm the type of person that like will not assess all the risks and just be like, there's probably risks, but well, they'll show up when they show up.
Them,
right?
Yeah.
So I would just like go after things, and I would chase things down and just take the chances. Oh, well, you know, there's only a 20% chance that could work. I'd be like, no, I'll gamble on that. Let's go. Right?
Okay.
So that's like context of like, we had the company. This is my personality. And then at that time, let's move back 2.5 years. I was trying to do like some social stuff on Facebook because I thought Facebook video was going to be the next big thing, because I didn't think that YouTube was going to like, I was like, YouTube is like, everyone just does YouTube. Maybe Facebook, maybe I have a better chance and better opportunity if I become like a Facebook guy. Right? Because there's like a handful of those people. Like there's like Nas Daily, and people go, oh, Nas Daily is like a Facebook guy. He doesn't make YouTube videos. That's a Facebook guy. So maybe I can like, you know how there's Casey, there's Ben Brown, there's this person, those are all YouTubers. So maybe I can be like lumped into this like Facebook community.
Okay.
All right, so I was like, all right, let's do that. I had a lot of success with making these like travel videos where I go to a location, film it, put it out, and some of these videos get like a few million views.
Oh wow.
And I was like, this is insane. Like this is
something.
This is my in.
Yeah.
Right? And then so I was kind of doing social things then, but we were also still doing the company. I was like, this is fun. And then at that time, I had seen that my friend Peter, who I used to shoot, Peter McKinnon, we used to shoot weddings back in the day.
Oh, no way.
Together. That's how we first connected, was like over shooting weddings.
That's pretty cool.
And I saw that one of his videos, which was like the camera hacks one in 90 seconds, got featured on like Petapixel. And I'm obviously like a gearhead and like gear nerd. So I was like, saw it on Petapixel, and I messaged him, I DM'd him on Instagram because we were friends. And I was like, Peter, it's been like a year or two since we chatted last, but dude, I saw you on Petapixel. This is insane, man. Like, awesome. And then he was like, dude, it's so great to hear from you again. Like, let's grab a coffee. So from the time I messaged him to the time like we actually got coffee, which was only like 2 months later.
Oh, so quick.
Like pretty quick. He had grown like a few 100,000 subs, right? So then I like started helping with some of his videos. I was watching him, and he was telling me more about the ins and outs of YouTube. And we sat down 9 months into his career. So this was about like August, and he was just about to hit like 1 million subs. And it was like super close to it. And we were sitting down over chicken wings, and he was like, dude, I see what you're doing on Facebook. I see who you are and the type of person you are. Like, I really think you'd be great for YouTube.
Right.
And I think you should do it.
Okay.
And I remember like that, from the moment he said that to the moment like I decided, was like kind of this like 1 month, 2 month like period. Because like what you have to realize is like, if I'm going to do YouTube, it's not just like, oh, I'll make a couple YouTube videos.
Right.
It's like, I have a career, and I'm like, we're trying to grow a company. And then I'm also trying to be like, let's do YouTube on top of that. So that's when those like hours come in, where it's like 60-hour weeks now turn into like 80, maybe 100-hour weeks and shooting videos. And that time on YouTube means time away from my family, time away from Lizzie, time away from our company potentially for opportunities. Like I had to like, when we were starting off YouTube, I had to like, Lizzie, I can't come to this shoot, or we got to push this shoot back because like Pete wants to go shoot tomorrow, and this is like a good opportunity.
Yeah.
Right? And she'd be like, I don't know, this seems kind of like selfish. Right?
Because you're making that a priority now.
Yeah, and I'm making YouTube a priority instead of like other things. And like, and then balancing that, like it's a whole, like when you start off in anything, it's like, let's call it riding a bike of YouTube. You're wobbling everywhere. Like you don't know what's going on. So you're figuring it out. So like it was, to answer your question, and with all that context, it was a very long decision to be like, I'm doing this because I consciously knew I'd be taking time away from other people that were important in my life. And I'd be taking time away from other things that were important. And that meant like saying no to jobs that were paid on our corporate and commercial side to do jobs for free on the YouTube side, in the hopes that YouTube would be a thing.
Right, and it would pay off.
Yeah. And that's where the gamble comes in. It's like, oh, even if this is a 10% chance and it's slightly increased by the fact that like Peter might give me a shout out, then maybe I can turn this into a career.
Yeah. But it's just like, that's almost like perfect timing, because it's like, you know, you reconnected with Peter, and what a guy to actually kind of, I would maybe consider him a mentor to you.
Totally.
Like,
he's like one of my best friends that provides so much career guidance.
Yeah. And when you were, speaking of the guidance, when you were first starting out, maybe if you, what are two tips that also, you know, the audience can take value from, of like, you know, if anyone out there who's just starting a YouTube channel and wants to grow it, can like implement, or, you know, even you implemented when you were starting out?
One of the ones that like always resonated with me, and I still try to do it to this day if we can, is like, if you have an idea about a video and you're like excited about it, like make it as quickly as you possibly can.
Okay.
So like that's the thing, is like keep the momentum going, because like what we always found is that like we have a couple projects right now that are kind of like ongoing, and we're kind of chipping away at them over months, and you just kind of like lose your excitement. It's like trying to kick up the ball in soccer. It's just like, it's not easy. It's like hard, rather than just being like, I'm excited about this idea, start, finish, upload, move on, done.
Okay.
And like, you'll see that excitement in the content, and you'll see that carried through in a lot more ways. So I would say, like, if you have an idea for a video, try to follow your own voice and make it as quickly as possible. Okay. Because it's very easy to like see what are trends on YouTube and then make that thing and then overanalyze it, and then you just lose the excitement about it, or you try to do it, or oh, it's like, we'll shoot this day and then we'll do this day, oh, this thing goes on. It's like, no, make something as quickly as you possibly can. Okay. And then 2 is definitely like find your niche and try to find like 2 or 3 things about you that you can kind of go in on. So if it's like you want to do a photo and video channel, let that be like one of your pillars. Okay. And then if there's something else that you really like for me, maybe it's like wake surfing, or maybe it's cooking, or maybe it's like Lizzie and I's relationship, then that's like another pillar. Like we'll make that a part of like a vlog series in it. So that's like uniquely to us. And then find one other thing so that you can cycle these like themes around in your channel that are more you, but it's more or less niche down into like 1 to 2 things that people can like latch onto. So at the beginning, I would, like Sarah Dici always says, like there's a really good one where it's like 1 video for them, 1 video for you, because it's all about like longevity in this career. Because YouTube is like, you don't want to burn yourself out by trying to make too much content for someone else or for an audience, because like, oh, I think they'll want this. Right. A lot of the times it's also more of that like Steve Jobs mentality. It's like they don't know they want it until you've made it. Yeah. Right? Yeah. So like this combo of like all those like themes are like things that come up all the time when I'm trying to create content.
A thing I want to circle back to is before we were talking about like consistency, and you were saying it's not always like, you know, uploading every single or every day or twice a week. It's also the quality. Totally. So did you know, when you were first starting out, were you paying attention to, okay, I gotta not only make this entertaining and creative, but I gotta make sure the quality is good? Or did the quality came later on when you had more resources to spend on equipment, spend on an editor, and do all this other stuff?
I always have this mentality when I'm like starting out or making something, where it's like, I'm gonna learn, like let's call it a graph here. Okay. Right? I'm gonna learn and just like release videos and grow over a longer period of time, rather than being like, I'm not gonna make anything and behind the scenes no one's gonna see anything. I'll just like get really good really quickly. Now I'm at this level. I'm almost rather like just show and like, all right, maybe it's not a perfect video, and maybe there's like weird audio stuff, or maybe there's this, but like make it, release it, move on, learn from like the mistakes of that, and just keep going and grow over a longer period of time, versus it just trying to be like, make this perfect. Oh, this one cut should be like a microsecond here. A lot of the times you're probably already 80% of the way. And if you feel like you're like, I'm done with this project, just release it, put it out in the world. But there's 2 frames of mind when it comes to like consistency, right? Because like I always say, like you could take like the Sam Colder approach and just like, you know, he puts out like a couple of videos per year, but like every time Sam drops a video, you know it's going to be like amazing, right? So like his consistency is about quality, right? Whereas like some people's consistency is just about like upload frequency. Like it's like, oh, I'm just there, I'm seen there. Like, oh, this is a good video, but it's not something that you're like, oh, this was like art, or this is amazing, but you're still there. Where I think certain people have done really well is when you can hit consistency and quality and like upload frequency. And I think that's part of the reason why Peter was so successful in the beginning part of his career. It's because he was just never missed uploads, and they were always like banging, right?
Interesting.
So, and it's tough, and that's where like I would miss consistency, like I would miss like a month because we were just so busy with like our other job, and had gigs that I had to go, like I have to go 15 days with Mercedes to like a job somewhere.
Right.
And that just means I can't make a YouTube video. Yeah. And I would notice this like drop off in the audience retention or something like that.
And engagement probably.
And engagement. So like a lot of it now where my head's at is just like, my consistency has shifted rather than like make a video, make sure it's up every week, is definitely more on the lines of like, just make sure it's great and it goes up when it's ready.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, even for us sometimes, even with projects or uploads, like, well, I'll speak for myself. I'll get in my head being like, man, we missed that day, or this is late, and it's just it weighs on me. But like you said, you know, you take the time to make sure it's quality.
Yeah.
You know, your audience is gonna appreciate that, and they're gonna see at the end of the day, they're gonna see the growth. And I think that growth is maybe more important than, you know, having to come out and be perfect, because that's like, really, I feel like that's unrealistic to a certain extent, right?
I think the flaws work in your favor on YouTube. I think people like appreciate when you're like a little bit more off the cuff, or you make mistakes, or like something's not perfect.
Yeah.
Because that's another reason why I also think Casey did really well, because his like someone described it really well. His like stuff's very scrappy. Right? And it's like, but you kind of love it because it's so scrappy. Like it's professional, but it still looks very like the camera would fall over, and like he makes mistakes, and that's what makes it seem so authentic and real. And I think the more that you can incorporate those things into your content, the more, at least on YouTube, I think that works in your favor. It just depends on the brand that you're building.
Of course. Now, I think a thing that goes along with that, kind of ties into this theme, is growth. So obviously you have a strong following on YouTube and Instagram and social. So as a creative, how do you obviously maintain that following and that audience, but also look for ways to really grow that at the same time? Because when you're at the level that you're at now, I feel like, you know, it's very hard to like, okay, figure out ways to up that and do that. So how do you challenge yourself like creatively to do that?
I think I've definitely stopped caring about like the growth metrics in the sense. So it's like, oh, you know, I only got 1,000 fans this week or whatever. Whatever the number is. Like, I'm not going to look at that and like try to measure that anymore. For me, it's about like growing as a photographer, or growing as like a YouTuber, or an on-camera personality, or as an editor, and like growing the skill set. Because the skill set, like, the audience can disappear, but the skill set will never disappear. So like, and then the funny thing is that when you get better at your skill set, the audience grows. So like the thing is like, don't focus on trying to grow your audience, like focus on just like bettering yourself and bettering your skills. And that oddly feeds back into like growing your audience. Because what I realized is that like when I got better at editing photos and better, because what I did is I recently like re-edited a bunch of Iceland photos from a trip that we went on like 2 years ago.
Did you post some of them?
Yeah, and I've been like reposting them just because I was like, I want content to post. And I look at my edits from 2 years ago versus my edits recently, and they're like just more tasteful, more artistic. I learned a lot more, and you can see that it's being received by my peers and being received by the audience better. So that it's up for me. It's now like challenging myself to grow within my niches and my skill sets, because it's hard. Because like I don't want to be like, oh, let's do this gimmick thing to get fans and like try to do this. It's just I tried to do that for a while, and it just like it doesn't work. And if anything, is that audiences are getting a lot smarter, and they can smell like BS miles and miles away,
and they won't tolerate it.
And they don't tolerate it. So like you have to like make good stuff. You like that era of YouTube where you could just make whatever and get views. I mean, maybe it works for some YouTubers, but at least within our niche, what I've realized is that like you got to like treat people with respect, treat them like how we're having a conversation here, and not try to like, you know, what's the word, like spoon feed them everything, because like everyone's very intelligent, they're very tech savvy, they're very with it, and when you can just talk to people like normal people, even through your content, you get that respect back.
Yeah, of course. Well, I mean, even just meeting you today, it's like, you know, I've watched your videos, and your personality and the way you come across is the same as you do on video versus in person, which, I mean, you know, you can't say that for everybody. So that's 100% true.
It's hard because like when there's a camera on, it changes your personality, and it's taken like years of being in front of the camera to just be yourself.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. I always say like a camera like changes who you are when it's in the room, because you become so like self-aware, and then you realize that it's like captured forever, and then you're like, well, if it's captured forever, like how do I look? How am I coming across? And then you just like all these things come in, like factors in just being authentically you. So that's why like it's an exercise. If you want to get good on camera, you just got to like
pretend it's not there.
Pretend it's not there. Or like, let's say like I'm at this camera right here. I'm not talking to the camera. I'm talking like the person on the other end of it, which is like in this situation, maybe it's Josh who's behind the camera, or maybe it's the person that I'm connecting with who's watching it through a computer or their phone on the other end. And you got to just talk to them like, yo man, what's going on? All right, so like today I'm going to show you how we like actually fill this cup of coffee up with something right now. And rather than being like, hi everyone, and welcome back to my channel. Hi you and you, like treating it like you're talking to an audience, because it is a very
like you're on a stage.
You're on a stage. It's a very personal thing. Like you have to remember that like the majority of how people consume your content is very like one-on-one. Like think about how you consume content. You're not more or less you're not watching with a lot of people.
No.
Right? Like it's not like everyone's going around the computer like, oh, let's watch this as like a group. That was like previous television era. People would watch that as like a family or as like friends would come over. You don't see that as much anymore because what's happening is people are like on the bus or they're on the go or they're watching and it's very personal. I'm one-on-one with this person. So how do you make that as like personal and authentic as possible?
Yeah, and also too, I mean, it works when you like for your audience as well, because when they have that one-on-one connection, they almost feel like they're part of the family, they're part of your life, like they know you in a sense. You know?
I don't like talking to an audience. I like talking to a person, and that's like that's a big thing.
100%. So I want to talk about now social media, because I know that's been kind of obviously a big play in your career, but just social in general has grown so much with TikTok. Now Instagram's it started with Reels.
Many things, man.
It's a lot. So I mean, just from my experience, I know you can probably speak to this too, but I feel like there's two different sides of social. There's the good side, there's the positive side, the creative side, and then there's the bad, the comparative side, kind of the negative side. So from your experience, like, you know, what's your kind of your thoughts on social right now, and how do you approach it as a creative on the platform who uses it every day?
Yeah, I kind of touched on it a little bit earlier. Like for me, I recently like deleted Instagram, Twitter, like even my mail, like all these like distracting apps. Let's call them distracting apps or things that like would feed my ego in terms of like, oh, I'm getting likes or I'm getting comments, or like if I say this thing, it's gonna like start a conversation or whatever it is. I just like, for me and the type of personality that I have, I'm like an all in or nothing, like a very like highly addictive personality. So like if I go down that path, it's very easy for me to get triggered and then just start going in, and then all of a sudden I'm looking and I'm like comparing, and then I find myself going through like those themes that we hear about all the time about like mental health, where I'm like, I don't even notice it, but I'm like, I just don't feel happy on Instagram. So I'm like, oh, how do I use this in a way that I will be happy? And I only ever feel happy when I've posted and then released my content into the world, rather than like consuming more than creating more. And then interacting with my initial fan base and like going there and then leaving it. So I go in, I post my thing. Hey guys, I'm here for a bit. I answer a couple of questions, and then I'll go away and I'll take it out of my life so I can go back to creating more. Because if I consume too much, that's when I start to feel like sad, and I start to get the other things that come in the comparative.
Like the FOMO or something like that.
Or like, oh, Matt Como's doing this thing in the world. Or like, oh, Rory Kramer's, oh, that's sick. I want to do that. Right? And I'm like, whoa. Like, remember to be happy for these people, and at the same time, don't let these like subconscious like comparative things come in, because it happens very quickly, and it happens on every scale too.
Of course,
right? A lot of people will be like, oh, I wouldn't expect that to happen to someone has like such a long career in this, and it's like, no, it happens all the time. It doesn't even matter what the numbers are. It could happen to somebody who has like 5 million fans, and they could still be like, oh, Kylie Jenner has this. Right? It's like it's all relative.
It's everybody.
It's everyone, right? So I would just say like, you know, find a way to utilize it. Find out how you consume social media in a healthy way, and do your best to stay on that track. And like, you'll waver, but for me, like, I needed to like delete it off my phone, and then when I use it, it's very conscious. I re-download the app, and then I like post my thing, and then I'm like, all right, I'm done. Boom, delete. It's off.
So so going from obviously, you know, using it, scrolling through every day, to now taking a step back, you've deleted it. Obviously, you're not checking it except to posting. How has that, like, I don't know, has it cleared your mental? Are you happier? Are you more energetic? Like, what are the changes that you're seeing right now?
Yeah, it's like all of that. I would say, like, I would just say like general happiness. Like I would say for the not first time, but just like in the last little while, I'm like the most happy I've ever been. And I feel like the most creative I've ever been. And I feel the most confident I've ever been. So like in the sense that I'm like, oh, I want to make this thing, and I feel like the confidence and excitement around it. Whereas before, it's almost like making would drain me, because I was like, but maybe this video won't do well.
Right.
And I'm like, what was happening, dude? This is ridiculous. And like, you created your own job and you're like upset.
Yeah.
This is insane. You know what I mean? Like, you're your own boss and you're being a shitty boss to you.
Right. Yeah.
It's ridiculous. Right.
Yeah.
So like, you have to like take a step back and like reframe everything and go into it. So like, I would say, because I'm not on my phone as much, like I've like my screen time has dropped drastically. So like when you just look, you think, oh, I just have more time. So what do I do with that time? I've been cycling, I've been like biking a lot more. Oh, now I'm more active. Well, now because I'm more active, I have more energy, and then I'm feeling better. I'm dropping weight, and I like how I look. And then it's like this whole thing that like it's all momentum in like the area that I want it to be going into. And then I've just realized it's like, okay, now that I have more time and all these things, I'm just it's fed me in the way that I've wanted it to. And I've known I should have been doing this for so long.
There's that voice,
but I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
And that's where the addiction comes in, where it's like, well, you're just addicted to social and you're just addicted to your phone that you literally can't put it down. And you're like, I know I should be working out right now. And you're just like on
scrolling,
it. And you're scrolling and you're like, whoa, I know I should be doing this, but like, you just can't.
Yeah.
And that's where like, a lot of people might comment and be like, well, you have no self-control and I can do it. It's like everybody's personality is so different. And for me, that's where I was at. And it wasn't working that to the point where I'm like, I need to like put my phone in like a safe or I need to delete everything, lock it away because I just realized it was like, I'm like, I hate this thing. Like I can use it in like in the right way, but right now I actually hate it. This is my phone, by the way, not just like an invisible thing. I just like get it out of my life. And I'll use it when I want to be purposeful or like I'll use it to be creative.
Interesting. Yeah. Because it's just crazy because you brought up a good point. It's almost like now it's like the phone is another arm almost because it's like, you know, you wouldn't think of walking out that door right now without a phone or going on a trip without a phone. It's kind of scary how much technology has just influenced our life to another level.
Yeah, we have like access to all the world's information to the point where you're like, well, I don't even need to learn that because I'll just Google it on the spot.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, I don't need to know where that is or what street that person lives on. Like, you know, like your parents will be like, make sure you take a left when you get to like Johnson Street. And then when you get there, you'll probably see like a house. And you're like, Mom, I'm just going to use Waze.
Yeah, or Waze.
Right? But then like if you take that away and you're like, well, if I didn't have it, maybe it is worthwhile for me to like know the directions to that place. Because like maybe I am relying too much on technology.
Exactly.
Right?
Now, speaking of Instagram in particular, I know they were one of the first platforms to take away the number of likes, the actual number, you know, so I guess to help with some of that comparative stuff. It just, in your opinion, you know, what are some of the changes that you think these platforms should make in order to make it, you know, a little bit more of a positive environment when it comes to people's mental health?
It's just tough because it's like it's all like algorithm based, right? So like you have to understand like the business model of Instagram, where it's like they just want you to be on it as long as possible because they can fit an ad in every 10 photos, and make right? So like for them, it's not in their best interest to feed your mental happiness unless it affects their business.
That's true.
Right?
Yeah.
So like I think they only started to do the comparative thing and take away the likes because they were like, well, maybe that will make people stay on it longer. Right? Because it's feeding this like other thing. So I would say like it looks like they're taking the right steps to it. I don't have like a, hey, Instagram, I have an agenda that you should like write it out. I don't really like know. I think it is a very like personal experience. I think it comes to the people and like how they want to interact and use it because it's like cigarette companies aren't trying to make their cigarettes less addictive. Of
course, yeah.
Right? They're still just making them and they put the arrows on the front and they put all the stuff.
The lungs,
but like people know what they're doing and they know what they're getting themselves into. So like I don't think Instagram is gonna say like they're gonna want to do anything. If I had choice over it, I would just say stop, you know, feeding the photos that you know are getting the likes and that pull people in, and making like an IG feed that, you know, is very targeted to your demographic and your interests. I would just say like maybe throw in some like other stuff in there that maybe is more artistic or maybe it would be something else that would be outside of like what you would normally be exposed to there. Right. But hard to say. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, Instagram if you want, you know, maybe take some pointers. I don't know. We'll have to see for sure. I want to talk about, you know, earlier in the interview you've mentioned a couple brands, Lamborghini, Mercedes. You know, you've worked with Adobe, Google, all these big brands. So what's been your experience like working with some of the, you know, the biggest brands in the world? And, you know, when you first started out, you know, did you even think you'd be working with brands like these?
I always like, I think we talked about it earlier. I just had this like these blinders on. So I'd always just be like, if someone else can do it, I can do it too.
Exactly.
So like I think I'm very grateful to be in the position that I'm in, but it was very much like if I want to work with Mercedes-Benz, I'll find a way to do it. Right.
Exactly.
And like I'll work backwards, I'll bust my ass, I'll go through the ditch, like whatever I need to do to like
to get in the door.
To get in the door, right?
Yeah.
So it was always like it's possible, like it exists. Like if someone else can do it, there's absolutely no other reason why you can't do it too, right?
Okay.
And obviously there's like exceptions to the rule and stuff like that too. So like I would say like if you have a dream of working with a company, just like somehow reverse engineer it so that you can find your way to do it. And even if that takes you 5 years, you still got to the end goal.
Exactly.
Right?
And it's worth it.
It's worth it. Yeah, and it's worth it in the end because you're going to be doing what you love. And that comes with all the saying yes and saying no and working hard and, you know, kind of eating shit for a long time until you have the opportunity to like get in those positions and like realizing that you're like, I am eating shit right now. This sucks.
Right.
But you know, it will get better. Right. So, and then to say what the experience is like, the funny thing is like when I worked with like more, let's call them like local businesses or smaller companies that their money was directly involved and the person's like, I made this money and now I'm investing in you to make this thing for me so I make more money. I always found that way more stressful than working with like Mercedes. Like Mercedes is just like, you shoot cars, we trust you, so do your thing.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what's your agenda? Like, do you have anything? Like, what do you want? They're like, no, just bring us sick photos.
Okay.
I was like, well, that's too vague. Like, more detail.
Yeah, exactly.
What do you want? They're like, no, we trust you. You do this. We like you. You do you. And then when you do that, and they like, the funny thing is like when you work with those brands, they have more budget and they trust you more. And because the budget is like allocated specifically for marketing, and there's usually like a hired marketing person that has no emotional attachment to that money, they just go, well, this is business, and if it works out, great. If it doesn't work out, that's the way. Not who cares, but like they're less emotionally attached to the money.
Right. Because it's not their money.
Exactly. Like they're trying their best to invest that money properly for the company that they're hired by.
Yeah.
But it's not so much like if it's like a wedding company and it's like, I worked so hard to do this, to make this money, and now I'm gonna trust you to make my video.
You dead in the
and then
eyes,
it's like even more stressful than it is working on the other stuff. And not to say that every job is like that. Like we definitely have worked with like bigger companies that have been very stressful and very hard to work with. And it's a lot to take on. But I would just say through like working with those bigger brands, there's more room for creativity because those brands understand that you're a professional.
Of course.
Right?
Yeah.
So it takes a long time to get into that position where people will trust you to do that, but you just got to keep working on your skill set and working on those over the years.
Of course. Now, do you have like a job that, you know, maybe you and Lizzie have done or you've done personally that stands in? I know we were talking earlier about you got to, drift and drive some pretty exclusive Mercedes-Benz vehicles across Canada. So any favorite projects?
That one's always like a really fun one. That's like probably like one of my favorite projects of the year. Like Mercedes goes out to like Gimli, Manitoba, and they make a giant ice track and they bring out like 20 cars with professional drivers and you go drifting on this course for like a couple days straight. So like that's always like a highlight because like as a motorhead, I love that. As a filmmaker, it's always like super fun visuals. The team and like everyone that works on those projects is so nice.
That's good.
So you're working with great people, doing cool shit, making fun videos. Like
you can't ask for anything better.
Definitely like my favorite thing by far. But there was one project this year that Lizzie and I worked on that like stood out where it's like, I always had this goal where I wanted to, I feel like a lot of people have this and like Cody Co's made videos. It's like, I want to travel the world and make videos. It's like, obviously a lot of people want to do that, but like I had set that as like a goal like 10 years ago. I wanted to like have a travel show and do it. We grinded through so many horrible travel jobs that like didn't pay and like we worked so hard to just get like a free beer or something like that. Like all these things to getting to the point where like we ended up like this past February, we worked with like the tourism board of Switzerland and we got to like travel through Switzerland and we had to make like a commercial for Switzerland. And it was like everything ran smoothly on the job. We got to do these crazy life experiences like eating fondue in like a hot tub after climbing mountains for the day. Like it was like, you know, when you've gone through all the worst things in the possible world to get to that point, and it finally you got to taste like what you had always dreamed of. It was exactly that, and it was the best job, and it was so fun, and I got to do it with like my fiance, and it was like we both just like loved it so much, and that was like, man. after busting our ass for so long.
It tasted sweet.
It tasted awesome. We got to finally eat the cake. You know what I mean? You know what I mean?
Cherry on top.
Yeah.
Speaking of travel, Switzerland, you've been to some pretty cool places. You've done a lot of traveling that, not the typical person gets to do. So what's been your favorite place you traveled to? And then what's one place after this whole pandemic's over that you want to get to?
Yeah, I would say like one of my favorite places in the world, and this is the Azores. So it's these islands in the middle of like the North Atlantic Ocean. It's actually part of like Portugal. That was like the first tourism board to ever really like support what we were doing.
Okay.
And they were like, hey, we'll send you on some bike trips, and we'll send you like go eat food out of a volcano or
that sounds cool.
stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I remember like that was the first time I think I realized that I was like, oh, this is possible. And like if I can get this, then I think I can turn this into a career or something like that.
Yeah.
And so the Azores has always remained like a really special place for me, and I just love it there.
Okay.
So I've been 4 times. Lizzie's been 3 times. We work with the tourism boards and a bunch of agencies out there. We do photo courses out there. That's like a regular thing that we do annually, where we'll like hand select like 10 applicants, and we'll do like one-on-one trainings with them out in the Azores, and it's like so fun. That's like I would say is probably like my favorite place with cool experiences. And just to, like, we got to go swimming with dolphins in like the North Atlantic Ocean, and you just like dive down in these dolphin pods. They're swimming around you and stuff like that. It's like stuff like that's like I love.
Yeah.
And then one of the places I really want to go to, there's like 2. I really want to like do like a boat trip through Greenland. Like a friend of mine goes on like one of these like old wooden ships, and he like teaches a course out there. So I really want to go and do that with him. His name's Gunnar. He's like Icelandic explorer. He's out of Iceland. He's awesome. And then I really want to go to Norway. Like that's like a dream place.
Yeah.
Like just like there's like beaches in Norway, like that's like on the bottom parts of mountains, and it's just like, oh, it looks like heaven.
Yeah, I have a pretty good friend who's from Norway, actually, like over by Oslo, and he just sends me like photos of the mountains and the lakes and the rivers, and I'm like, man, I need to get there sometime soon as well.
Yeah,
it's beautiful.
We're doing a trip that we're probably gonna be launching in the next couple of days. I don't know when this is coming out, but we're also doing like a group trip to New Zealand like next April. So awesome. Like we're gonna have like the opportunity to like travel with 20 people, and one of my dreams is to go to like Milford Sound, because there's these boats that like drive into waterfalls, and you can like take these photos of like standing on the front part of like this boat as like a waterfall is like pouring on top of you. I'm like, I want that.
Yeah.
I just like, and like that New Zealand just looks incredible.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, but specifically Milford sounds like a bucket list dream destination.
Okay.
We have this thing with like our group of friends where it's like everyone gets one dream trip, and like our 4 closest friends, and we all have to do it. So we did one of them last year. My friend wanted to go like dancing in the clubs in Berlin. So like we went and did it. And then Lizzie really wants to go to Chernobyl. Like that's her dream place. So, and then I've always wanted to go to Milford Sound in New Zealand and like fly a helicopter through like the fjords. Like that's like a dream thing for me.
Yeah.
So yeah, we'll see. So those are the things.
That sounds pretty cool.
Yeah.
So for people who want to, learn more about you, check out your content, subscribe to your channel, all that good stuff, where's the best place for them to check you out at?
Definitely YouTube is like the main place where you'll probably see like the most creative and like interesting and most personality on that platform. The second one would be Instagram. I like try to write like very like transparent, captions and try to be very like open with my audience and stuff like that on stories. And then if you just like Google Chris Howe, you'll probably find like interviews like this, and that's where you get to see some like real one-on-one and like some real stuff.
Of course, definitely. So to end off here, I just wanted to play a little rapid fire question game with you. That's cool. So I'm just going to rifle off some questions.
It's like short answer, or do you want me to like go?
Well, one of them couple of them you might have to think about them.
Okay, go for it.
So first one is, if you're on the TV show Survivor and had to vote either Peter McKinnon, Alan Palander, and Matty Hapuja off the island, who would you choose?
Oh man, that's so hard.
I know. I had to pick some 3 of your close friends. So.
Oh man. I would can I vote myself off the island? I don't know if I could do that to those guys.
Okay.
Like, go away. Yeah.
Get off the island.
Yeah.
Okay, so yourself. So I mean, you mentioned before that you're used to sing, play guitar. If you could record a track with any living artist, who would it be? I
love Ed Sheeran.
That's a good choice.
Yeah. I just like everything about him. Like as a person, I feel like it would be like a really fun creative project that like just has like some more like universal appeal.
Yeah.
And then I'm also a really big fan of Logic. That would be like a super close second right now.
Right.
I would say.
Okay. So next one, do you have a favorite movie of all time?
This is gonna sound like super basic, and it's just like a feel good movie, and I'm probably gonna get judged for it. But like Forrest Gump is just like amazing. Yeah, I love it. It's just like it's something. It's one of those like just feel good movies. You put it on. I love the theme of it. So yeah.
And you gotta love Jim Carrey too. He's
yeah. Tom Hanks.
Oh, I'm thinking of some other movie. My bad. Oh, I apologize. Last one. If you could have any superpower in the world, what one would you choose?
I don't know. Just to like. If someone was feeling sad, just be like, I can make you happy.
I like that. Like a little like snap or like a potion.
Yeah, or something. Yeah.
Okay, I like that. Well, Chris, thank you for coming on the interview. Squirtle. Really appreciate it. Guys, thank you for your time and attention. I'll make sure to leave all of Chris's social links in the description box below, as well as our own. So if you guys want to keep up to date on our content as well, you'll be able to. Chris, thank you for coming on the show again, and we'll catch you guys soon. Take care.